Welcome to Outside the Box, number 319. I'm Alex Ansary. It's August 9th, 2014. Welcome to the real world, the real Portlandia. Ladies and gentlemen, new residents, old, future, and former. Those labeled mentally ill and those that think they have remained sane. Well-adjusted members of the so-called progressive human settlement zone known as Portland, Oregon. Welcome to all to tonight's broadcast. We're going to be taking a closer look at this city of my birth, that spontaneous 1980 act of life that occurred shortly before Mount St. Helens blew, all before I even got a chance to say anything controversial that at times causes actual humans to erupt in their own ways in response to the information. By the way, these are my websites, alexansary.tv, youtube.com/alexansary. You can also find me on Facebook and Twitter. Email me at alexansary6@gmail.com, alex_ansary@hotmail.com. Tonight is a night whose time has been coming, one quite overdue, the OTB presentation of the real Portlandia. People often ask, Alex, why discuss, point out, focus, or pick on, as they might think, Portland, Oregon? Isn't everywhere just like this or that? Hasn't it always been this way? Let this message clearly be communicated. We live in a false, inverted reality, a subject that will continue to get more attention on this show, where up is down, down is up, right is wrong, wrong is right, war is peace, slavery is freedom, and on down the line you can even find a clue from Alice in Wonderland. If I had a world of my own, everything would be nonsense, nothing would be what it is, because everything would be what it isn't. And contrary-wise, what it is, it wouldn't be, and what it would be, it would, you see. There's no stopping this crazy train making up today's collective consciousness that is measured with how we treat each other and what we allow into our lives, what we manifest. And we live in a world of lies and deception. It's not just about the macrocosm, it's about the microcosm. A world itself caught in a larger unseen web of manipulation from on high or low, depending on what you're observing it from, where you're observing it from. A world in which the cities we live in the modern era have become startling expressions of the central system of control. The real Portlandia is one of those cities on earth that appears to have quite a high-tech future waiting for it. A world in which our city's local controllers and investors are shaping it into something far different than the one that they are describing to the world at large right now, at a time when much of the world is looking for the back door of their own bankrupted communities, ones they feel less safe in today than yesterday, and so they are baited here by the mainstream streams of influence within the media, which is making this story in development very interesting, in fact, even chilling. One truth remains, you can't run from your problems, and taking a lesson from the Titanic, only so many people can safely ride on a escape boat until it begins to sink. And this graphic represents the microcosm of the macrocosm, and that is why we address Portland, Oregon tonight. What is known as the collective consciousness of those residing in or near the Portland area is a reflection of the cosmos themselves, including the energies of the universe that are less friendly to humanity, and in some cases, reflections of the universe that care passionately for humanity, the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine. There are reasons why there's so much apathy in this city in regards to the suffering of others, and there's also reasons why throughout the history of Portland, the passion, spirit, and drive of the Northwest activist, contrarian, independent thinker, philosopher, resistor of conformity, even at times, the way of the righteous outlaw or revolutionary, the spirit of those things lives on. Sometimes, and some of us today, as the warrior spirit from the ancient world lives on through various expressions. The balance to what the wicked spirits of this world have created is the consciousness within ourselves that knows better than to be tempted to the dark side or to lease out our souls to energies that give us pleasure in order to drain us of our life force. Energy vampirism. We'll talk about it more in a future show. Portland is a place to learn about these energies, to learn about these things, and to decide where you stand, what energies you want to play with, whether you're going to participate in the parasite game or whether you're going to speak your truth regardless of the consequences, including socially. so many different individuals of the light, of the dark, have called Portland home at some point. And so now with more and more people being in this region, we're going to see more intensity of all types of energies. It hasn't taken me long in the months that I've been back in Portland after almost 3 years away to see the changes in town, including socially as well as economically. And it's easier to see changes in a hometown when you leave it for a few years than it is for either a new resident or for someone that does not travel or change their routine whatsoever. Their routines in their life may not include practical general awareness of our surroundings, and they may not have any pattern recognition whatsoever. In fact, they may not want any. Therefore, it is vital that this presentation take place now rather than later, as there is far more that needs to be discussed concerning the specific ways in which Portland is morphing into a doped-up, mind-controlled, and abused version of what it previously was and already is. The real Portlandia is one that needs people speaking truthfully on its behalf, for its behalf, with true care and concern for its future and livelihood. A Portland that one could say needs a public intervention on the part of friends willing to wrestle the dirty, rusty needle away. Another reason why Portland: I live here, I have a lot of experience here, I'm sensitive to a lot of energies here, the distinct wave patterns of each of your neighborhoods. And it's also here where I started the show in 2004 after some major life events that will be shared another time. I understand the abstract yet consistent nature of Portlanders and how they respond or treat people that speak, live outside the box of the norms, despite their passionate speeches of their progressiveness and importance, especially in comparison to people in other cities and regions of the earth. All they miss is the bumper sticker that says, "Move to Portland, become enlightened," or "Become a Portlander and become superior to others, become more progressive than others," simply because you live here. And perhaps it's a meme that will take off soon enough. Literally, it certainly is an attitude that is extremely repelling. The mind-blowing, off-the-charts Richter scale arrogance is one that I have never seen fully addressed, never fully addressed myself. I have never seen this level of arrogance in other places on the earth. Brace yourselves, because Kansas, or shall I say the plastic version of Portlandia, is going bye-bye this evening. One last note for those of you watching online from other cities or going to other cities from here: you are free to replace the real Portlandia with the real fill in the blank with the name of your city you are thinking of or are in. In no way have I ever said or am saying or will say that certain areas hold a monopoly on being a certain way. Now, I know I'm reading off the script. There is a lot of time that I put into compiling the words that I will speak before you tonight, so bear with me as we try to cram a lot of information into just a 1-hour show. And also keep in mind that next week we're covering an entirely different topic. So that is the nature of Outside the Box TV. Yet there is a consistent theme throughout many of the programs. Regardless of how some of you respond to this information and opinions, the show must go on. I recommend you watch with an open mind, understand that people are going to have differences of experience within a city in a particular time and place. I would encourage a position of empathy and understanding over apathy and gross intolerance of open sharing. Most importantly, before we begin, one last pre-show point. You are a human being, I hope. Then again, maybe you arrived from far, far away. And even if you did, your true origins are far beyond the land or planet that you were born on or into. Your true identity transcends perception of race. Therefore, it is foolish to take offense to anyone taking a critical view of how some people have treated this land and others that have been born into or migrated to this real Portlandia. In fact, if you're offended, maybe you should examine why and what behaviors I speak of that are offending you. If that sounds like something that you are engaged in, that level of behavior, maybe you should ask yourself, if it is I that is the real enemy of this region's future stability, and I would suggest that everyone look in the mirror for accountability's sake. Far too much of that arrogance, that judgment, as we'll get into tonight, has made up the real Portlandia. And so we begin. The real Portlandia is one that major media publications are calling the #1 city to move to and raise a family, amongst other things, a place being presented to the world to be a sustainable, progressive, friendly, open-hearted, even spiritually leaning, close to nature, happy, shiny, happy people holding hands city. Of course, with Mount Hood to the east, the coast to the west, the Columbia River to the north, the gorge to the east, there's some very interesting energy here, primal earth energies, And so there is something about the nature aspect to this region. But in reality, the real Portlandia is one in which history starts with a violent beginning with men with axes cut deep into its heart, forming a culture in their image, brutally displacing those, the Native American tribes, that inhabited this region before them with smallpox, measles, and other diseases, forcibly removing them, murder, forced assimilation of the children into their culture in churches downtown. The state of Oregon's first government, by the way, was essentially the KKK, according to history. And by the way, the state's first mental institution was on Asylum Avenue, now called Hawthorne. It is true that Oregon is a very green state, but it's also a very red state. And we aren't talking politics, we're talking red as in blood, as in this bloodshed that came before us has left an energetic imprint over the land. That I believe and always have. This is not limited to Portlandia, however, specific events that occurred over time in specific areas, possibly leaving strong energy residues that forever have affected future residents of this area until intention is brought forward to raise the energy of Portland. While most claim that that's exactly what Portland is good at, being enlightened helpers and lovers of the earth, again, we'll get into that in due time. But from its beginning moments when the trees were violently ripped out, a once ancient forest was cleared to make way for the very first shacks and first buildings to feature the imported booze and prostitutes, the town's first women. It was party time for the wealthy white New England plutocrats that organized some twisted circuses. And this is an image from Wicked Portland, the book. I recommend that people look for that book online. You can find it at the library as well. In Portland, the plutocracy had free rein to do what they could not do openly back east in the more established cities. Their part in establishing Portland as a prime vice city was also done to profit further from the earnings of the new working male class that composed of loggers, sailors, miners, and more that came from all over the country in order to blow their newfound and growingly popular dollar bills in a place where every imaginable excitement of the senses of the day could be bought or sold. With the money and booming population, they enacted the first city of Portland in their image and to suit their private interests. The screams of the past seem to live on, and one's imagination can probably fill in the blanks as to what kind of suffering some of the town's first working girls may have endured. But the suffering was not limited to women living in a world ruled by men. Our subject several weeks ago, episode 2 since my return, was the history of Shanghaiing, or the art of crimping, which is duping, drugging, or tricking unwitting sailors, loggers, and other men in the late 1880s, and also earlier and later, but specifically centering around that time period was where a lot of that was going on. Men were tricked into indentured servitude onto ships leaving the Willamette River. Sometimes they forged their signatures on the ship's articles, the crimps that is. This went on for a long time, and it's in Old Town Chinatown today where a lot of this took place, including the operation of the town's first brothels, gambling dens, and saloons. Today we can see a continuation of the past. It's still very turbulent in this part of town where a lot of these things took place. With a lot of human beings suffering from mental illness, addiction problems, and the city of Portland's history of working to keep much of the town's problems, including vice, tucked away in this particular area. We can see also how the energy of the past is affecting people today in the new real Portlandia when we know the history and we know the accurate present. This will help us in seeing where we are going, and that is something that needs to be discussed. There's a lot to cover in 42 minutes, but I'm going to do my best. I really am. Today, the real Portlandia is one in which a new wave of migration in recent years has taken the city by storm. However, instead of these moves boosting the quality of life for Portlanders, overall it's dramatically raising the cost of living, strongly affecting those on limited incomes, disability, SSI, and of course the homeless, and those receiving no aid whatsoever from the government. There's many of us in that category. The unnatural growth in population and demand for housing is driving property values up to dangerous levels that are likely to displace thousands more native-born Portlanders in the coming years, especially those dependent on Social Security funds, which are not adjusting to cost of living demands or increases like gas, utility, food, or rent. Property tax and home value increases is driven by a long list of buyers throughout America thanks to the internet, thanks to all these TV shows and whatnot, that can afford to pay higher than the average rents, and they are moving here in droves. And it's not just California. Big East Coast migration is coming, is here. Start to ask yourself who benefits from putting the focus on Portland in the mainstream media, promoting TV shows like Portlandia that bastardize what this town really is while leaving out the good things that have come from this area. We see the kind of selfishness and extreme narcissism and vanity that it's attracted since. Portlandia now featured on SNL, at least the actor, Saturday Night Live in New York City. It is an issue of supply and demand, and Portland has been put out on the global market. Its ass has been put out there. It's time to twerk Portland. It's time to twerk, twerk, twerk. It's an issue of supply and demand. Portland's out on the market being branded as something that it's not, using what good is left in Portland while jeopardizing its existence in our future at a rate that special private interests appear to be taking over more property and land, accumulating more outrageous wealth, all the while maintaining tight control over what is being voted on, spent, and done behind closed doors at City Hall, in particular the finances, the investments, even the mysterious bondholders, which we referenced last week in our Investigating the City of Portland episode. In the real Portlandia, Escape from New York and Escape from LA weren't just movies. I've seen dozens of I Love New York t-shirts on families in recent weeks and days, and I don't mean families that look like they're struggling financially. They have new cars, live in nice homes, and they love New York before it got to be too much for them. Similar things can be said about the extreme level of California evacuees that are fleeing bankrupted cities, a larger statewide police state, higher crime, and so much more. The belief right now is that if you go in droves with hundreds of thousands of other humans, they're expecting 400,000 people in this region in the next several decades. And we're talking the whole metro area. Now, 400,000 people, Portland's been about that population for more than a decade, for some time, okay? It's going to be a big, big deal to double and then move on from there, however long this Tower of Babel is going to continue. Utility rates, fees, and taxes continue to explode in cost. Every indicator shows a situation rich with runaway debt and spending that can land Portland easily into bankruptcy, giving those private interests vast degrees more power than ever before. These are recent headlines produced by the Oregonian, obvious rebuttals to some of the more outrageous #1 titles that Portland has received by larger publications. There's no doubt in my mind that there's more than a few people here, frankly, that feel taken for a ride, just like the old times in old Portland. Portland has also been listed on America's happiest cities, most unhappiest cities, and that is becoming clear. High in drug usage, high in alcoholism, sex addiction, domestic violence, divorce rates, and suicide. We didn't even get into unemployment, the real unemployment numbers that aren't being counted, the real homeless numbers that aren't being counted. In the real Portlandia, there's no escape from the world out there. You can't just run from your problems, from the economic problems, from homeless issues, from public safety issues, from concerns about environmental degradation. You will find in some cases many things you do not expect to find here, and in great numbers, and will continue to, as long as this is a prime moving spot for America and the world. Portland's been rated number 23 to move to in the world, according to a prominent publication. Did you know that? Did you know that? I think you should. I think everyone should if you care about this place that I call my hometown of the year 1980. In the real Portlandia, tech jobs are booming. It's good for those that have gone to school and got the education and got the okay to work for the man. But here's something you need to know about layoffs. Many Oregonians have already been displaced when their tech job ended or when they were forced to take pay cuts of several dollars an hour. Many other large employers, including hospitals, have cut their full-time employees down to 30 hours or less. How long, honey, are you going to be able to afford living single your whole life, relying on that cell phone, relying on your hospital job, relying on your bank job, relying on other things that in fact haven't given you more power but have sent us into a weird, sick, demented game of competition? How long before that actually starts taking place and you're personally affected by these changes? It's a good question we should all ask ourselves. Many are on temporary contracts as well, where they can just fire you in a couple years. Dependency on such volatile and heartless corporations and government, which is fascism, when they are in bed together, frantically doing it like rabbits. It is not the best long-term urban survival strategy in the new world that you've come to. Just like those that came before us in the old Portland, the old plutocracy that built this place. Just because you might be a rock star today doesn't mean that you're going to be treated like one tomorrow. In the real Portlandia, it's getting very crowded. If you drive, you have to be very careful that you do not accidentally hit an almighty biker, straight from God himself, the goddess herself. This has always been quite a focus for drivers when bikers appear out of nowhere and are in great abundance, and don't follow the rules of the road, and don't respect walkers. Many bikers have attitudes that are aggressive towards drivers, and it's been a growing issue for years. Some fights have been documented and reported between bikers and drivers. While bikers see drivers as aggressive for simply driving the speed limit on a road made for cars, walkers need to be especially aware of bikers, especially when they're flying through a neighborhood street at 40 to 50 miles an hour like a superstar. Because these bikers aren't announcing themselves or showing any respect whatsoever to the locals for the person walking. It's a position of elitism, not uncommon for this region, and it's aggressive behavior, okay? Aspects of the growing biker class are incredibly rude in how they race by pedestrians without warning, and in many cases, as I said, breaking traffic laws. I've come to the conclusion that a well-trained gang of biker assassins could take over the city of Portland if they're disguised well enough as the average-looking Portland biker, basically white yuppie migrants that came from elsewhere wearing helmets, Speedos, and bug-eyed sunglasses. Hands down, they can take over the city and perhaps disappear a few folks. Keep your eyes on them. As a walker, you need to keep a very clear head about you as you walk. This is not the time for America's favorite current pastime, which is to lose yourself in the land of your cell phone, thumb scanning yourself, giving your information to the big banks, to the the FBI, the CIA every few seconds, while pleasure-enhancing chemicals are created by your brain reward style each time you get a new text message or message on your Facebook mobile. How some people in the real Portlandia have made it this long without being hit by a truck is something amazing indeed. I'm very careful and I don't walk in front of cars in order to make them stop. Stop, I am a god, you are a car, I'm gonna make you stop. It brings back this phrase that I've heard before, you could be right, but you could be dead right. Unfortunately, this is a big part of Portland culture, and it's done all over. Sometimes it's done as an anti-car form of elitism when people casually start out in the street and exercise their, protected walker status. I encourage a mentality that is not dependent on someone else stopping for you, breaking you, seeing you, hearing you, or giving a damn about you. It's not good survival strategy. As the saying goes, you can be right, but you can be dead right. I do not believe you have the right to interfere with the free will of others, and that includes impending traffic, walking in front of that, or this. Those humans, be they walkers, bikers, or drivers, that don't know how to share the road in a common sense way are people that probably live lives violating the free will of others or using their influence to manipulate the decisions of others. In other words, this careless action, the worst way you can play this game of Frogger. It is indicative of an entitled personality, not an aware person on the cutting edge of human evolution. In the real Portlandia, you find that sense of entitlement permeating through the air, not only in how people cross the street, bike, drive, but how you are treated when you don't tip enough, buy enough, consume enough, or impress others enough, the main religions of the Portland area. The entitlement mentality engrosses so many dimensions of reality here, most of all the desire to demand to be entertained the way that they want to be entertained. This word entertainment has many definitions in this case and could relate to relationships activism, those watching this show now, wishing to be entertained or informed in the specific nature that they desire, or spoken to with a religious or partisan political tone, you know who you are, or in a particular angry anarchist, burn it all, let the world die tone, and good luck to you if you're stuck in that pit of despair and confusion and resentment. In the real Portlandia, you find a city that nurtures the narcissist within, that personality within the larger body of mankind that is obsessed with itself, without emotion in some cases for others. You have a city that rewards those that effectively sell themselves or present a favorable image of something they are projecting. It's a world that supports the player playing the game and those that cheat their way to the top or the bottom. Ever hear of middle management? It's a great place to investigate this reality. And for those involved in middle management, past, future, present, if there's a way you can save your soul, redeem your soul, or preserve your soul, I would give this some consideration and how these things can affect your... In the real Portlandia, if you are too smart for your own good, it could be a challenge for you. If you're a true contrarian, free thinker, swimmer against the grain, Portland's reputation is one of progressive ideals and radicals everywhere. And it's true the city has some elements of that. It's also richer than cheesecake when it comes to the influence of cliques overall, including political groups that are mostly organized around a form of political groupthink or collectivist thought or socialist or communist or a distorted understanding of anarchy. Because when you go around breaking stuff, you're violating free will. Therefore, you're not a real anarchist. In your own way, you're a fascist. Doesn't matter whose property it is. You run around breaking stuff, you're a fascist in your own way. Enjoy the hat. You made it. Those with libertarian ideals are the minority taking a back seat to mainline Democrat politics and candidates regardless of a real independent thinker and peace activist ability to document the long list of crimes of the current administration. It doesn't matter to those in a system of groupthink. People like myself are totally shunned by the entirety of the so-called peace movement. We're not taken seriously. I'm considered crazy. Yes, I am. Ask around. You'll find out. Now, I want to say that in the real Portland, mental illness, the real Portlandia, it's exploding. It's across the board. It's not just about the homeless. And people don't understand why. Those deemed mentally unstable by mainstream society are often treated in subhuman ways. Those that are homeless are also viewed as mentally ill. And then there are those that believe that they are sane that are amongst us, those that refuse to look into their own hearts when faced with information about what is really going on that could send someone away from blind worship of the current top puppet in Washington, D.C. Instead, you see thousands of coexistence stickers next to a sticker for the person placed in office whose list of war crimes are extensive, regular droning of innocent children in countries throughout the world, coexistence bumper stickers, and stickers for any federal government puppet or president is as tactful as putting mustard on ice cream or even motor oil on Thanksgiving turkey before baking, or maybe just, shooting that oil or some other stuff that doesn't belong in your body. There's going to be a few complications there. Certain things don't go well together, you dig? Some things just don't go well together, even if Portland's restaurants are incredibly eclectic with their styles of cooking and flavoring. Some things you just don't do. And the real Portland, it takes some time for some locals to figure some things out, whether you're white, black, Hispanic, or other. There are many others that aren't counted. We'll get to racism in just a bit, which is not limited to one particular group. It's across the board. But it takes some time for Portlanders to figure out how the world actually operates. The nation, let alone their city. The mainline political allegiances are the biggest hindrances. The groupthink nature within self-described radical circles is outstanding and above and beyond what I have seen in other cities. It's not just about the president, it's about the widespread support for corporate city council members over the years. Oh, he kissed a 17-year-old boy in the bathroom. It's okay, he's gay. But if he was straight, you know how many women will be out City Hall saying, I want that man's testicles on a bottle right now, we can't have. Well, I mean, some. Then again, the morality of the society is literally plummeting faster than the Twin Towers on 9/11. And so where things are going to go from here in terms of people just rolling over, by the way, the city of Portland has changed things so you can be a criminal and work for the city of Portland. They have removed that part of their application that says, have you been convicted of a felony? They just conveniently made that go away. Is that for their G4S friends? Is that for their HSBC friends? Is that for their Wall Street friends? Sure seems to be. There's a lot of private interests that are driving the city bankrupt, and in due time, they're going to start making more and more demands, more and more outrageous demands, as the people of Portland start showing themselves as truly apathetic individuals to the larger issues. We're not going anywhere. And as for that little recall, let me just say this politely about the organizer of that recall. If you're considered to be a conspiracy theorist, if you talk about issues like HSBC, if you talk about issues like G4S, you're not going to get a return call from the organizer of the recall Charles Hale's campaign that's taking place right now. There are a lot of Portlanders that'll stick with one issue, and it's straight taxes. I'm not gonna pay my $135 per year. But you start talking about killing, sex trafficking, you start talking about other things, and you're like, I don't know you. I can't hear you. I can't hear you. I talked to my friends. They've heard of you, Alex Ansary. They said you're an extremist. So let's go back to the news. Portland has been reported to be #1 for child sex trafficking. In 1 year, almost 500 underage children were taken into custody by police, and that does not count adult human trafficking victims. There's a lot of numbers that aren't counted. The region is rich with history of this activity and government involvement on various levels, like many other places. In the real Portlandia, several former mayors are known for their pedophilia exploits. One, Neil Goldschmidt, also serving as the state's governor. He was the mayor and the governor. And there's something about this region that seems to draw on the sex predator as well as the sex victim. Part of being a sex victim, by the way, is being someone that actually knows your attacker, that's actually okay with a friendship, that actually thinks it's kind of cute and hot to be held by your throat, as I've seen on 82nd when the pimp holds the young white girl by her throat. People drive by, go, yeah, whatever, and she's sitting there like with a smile like it's actually getting her off. There's something foul, not in Denmark, but in Portland, Oregon, USA. And it's certainly a rent town, I would say, with all the different powerful corporate groups that are very focused on this region at this time. So whether you want to hear this or not, dry those tears away, honey. The real Portlandia is one that comes with a vile sexual energy, and the frequency is anything but anything that could be described as sexually liberated. The people of this town are not sexually liberated. They're outrageously oppressed at their own hand, and I believe the energy of this land, the trauma it and the people endured from the past, we've spoken about parts of those things and histories. These are all factors that strongly influence the darker aspects of sexuality that manifest here, far more than the lighter aspects of sexuality. Also, women that live in this region are very unfriendly for the most part and don't look relaxed whatsoever when walking, running, driving, or biking or other down the street, with few exceptions. And one of the reasons I traveled beyond the confines of this region in 2011 was to see what it was like elsewhere in America. Seriously. While other places have their issues, a level of anxiety and fear that women seem to show, at least in my presence, whether they recognize me or whether it's just a biological imperative to seeing someone or feeling someone from another land, that in this country, the military is involved in many invasions throughout the world. I find it kind of strange to live an entire lifetime looking at people's anxiety towards me and knowing that they're in a government that's actually involved in the invading of these other countries. And certain people from different countries, regardless of what you're hearing in the news and all this stuff, they've done nothing to you. So I don't say that out of hate to you. I'm saying this as a sociological view going, this is really, really effed up. And it's more evidence of an inverted reality, Portland being a microcosm for the larger world suffering from a greater sickness and fracturing of consciousness. And we're going to focus more on that in a future show, that subject just by itself. And I've been to other places, Texas, Colorado, and it's been different. But then again, in those areas, I'm not known for doing what I've done on Access TV, which is looked upon by the community in a fairly negative way, not a positive way. The real Portlandia, by the way, and this is not meant to be an insult, there's actually a documentary film in the making right now called Whitelandia. And I believe that some people want it that way, and their social group choices is the reference material. The real-life documentation can be seen at clubs, parks, other social groups throughout the city, and there are many reasons why there's heavy migration here at this time. There's growing concerns about racial tensions in parts of this country, where the economic desperation is greater in some cases, and we can see the ways in which the institutional forms of control have turned the perception of races, notice, perception of races, against each other, including class warfare, including gender competition. Unfortunately, if you are not perceived to be fully white, white people may resent you for being aware of these changes that do exist, including tribalist behavior, in which darker-skinned humans are often left out of social circles, work opportunities, or other. Gentrification is a term widely known throughout the country, but it is here that the most extreme forms of it can be seen and found, and there are many white people that are going to be displaced from their homes in the coming months, in the coming years. It is happening now. And by the way, there's a certain amount of homes that have been foreclosed on that are still empty. They're just building the property value up, and then they will bring more. Build it, tear down the old homes, build the new micro homes, and they will come from afar. We're going to see more international migration to Portland now that it's being talked about on a global level. In the real Portlandia, the service industrial complex is one of the most conditioned experiences one can have in Portland at an entry level. However, the fierce, callous level of human competition exists through the work world, but it is in the service industry that its ugly head can be seen with full color. In the real world, those with the desired looks and assets move up in a world where certain middle managers with control, dominators, sociopathic tendencies are in charge. Women today believe that it's okay for men to be displaced as passed up for work because of a global world history of male domination of the workplace, and so this is evidence of a controlled, managed war of the genders for work, space, food, and more. It's actually even entered the mass consciousness, yet this is happening and is being artificially driven by inhuman forces that seek to see our own self-destruction. So divide man and woman. Have man and woman playing this game. Have man and woman compete against each other. Have man and woman have no empathy for each other. Have man and woman on hamster wheels making that money, baby. Gonna make that dollar, baby. We don't need to talk about that dollar falling. We can make that money, baby. The work situation is bad in Portland, very bad, and with that comes great discrimination and new forms of class and racial and gender tensions. Several former male managers of mine have been fired for sexual harassment or sex with staff. In the case of Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, after being let go in 2009 during the downtime after the banker bailout period that sent some aspects of the financial community into shock. The manager that let me go was also someone that had sex allegedly with a, well, I won't say this on air. He allegedly committed a crime with a woman that worked there, a staff member. It wasn't just having sex with the staff member, but this is from John's YouTube channel. So I saw an old, there he is. I saw an old coworker at the park, and she told me about him leaving Ruth's Chris, and I remember all the different times that he would pray on the hostesses at the front. And I remember feeling humiliated as I spoke before you here at Outside the Box TV, and I was denied promotion for years to be a server, to go from busser to server. And for years, I really thought that I wasn't good enough. And at this point, without a job, I really have lost confidence in myself in the restaurant industry, because someone like me does not appear to be someone that they want, and I know through my experience what the real world is like, regardless of whatever fairy tale, happy, shiny people holding hands world you live in. And I also encourage the viewers tonight to prove me wrong. And if there is work out there, even dishwasher work, please let me know. I am still homeless on your streets. And so I see these things and I see a great imbalance in the world, and I hear someone tell me this person committed an alleged crime with this particular woman, and who I happen to know. And we are talking about a teenager here. And I'm sick of it. I'm sick of people saying you shouldn't be talking about certain people. They're going to come after you. They're going to do this. Oh, they're going to, file a lawsuit for... I lost my job because someone pushed me out in the street. This is the same guy that would sit there stroking like his own penis the ponytails of the girl. I would sit there and watch the managers and go, what is this? And they're just like, oh, you're looking good today, feeling that ponytail. One girl was a lesbian, but she put up with it. Why? Because as a waitress, you don't have to strip, but you'll still walk home with $300 tips, $400. That's an outrageous amount of, and that's like being treated like a queen. That's like being treated like a king when you make that outrageous levels of money, all for bringing out a plate of food. The service industrial complex in this city is friggin' out of its mind. Let us pray for everyone trapped in it, whose soul's being sucked by it, especially those middle managers out there that have done wrong and callously fired people, only to find themselves years later fired and working part-time, if that, without at any point in their lifetime ever speaking out against the system, because the system treated them well while it treated them well. I'll never forget being let go from Roos. And not that I want to go back, but it was a memory that I'll never forget. And so, moving forward, now that we've spent ample time on that, The real Portlandia is one that punishes good behavior and rewards bad behavior. It's also how women treat men. Some men may also treat women this way. Women tolerate such behavior. Some women, not all women. There are going to be people that are good in this world, good women and good men. Good men and good women. You don't always hear about them. You don't always hear from them. They don't always feel a need to tell you that they're good or go on shows or do things or do activism, but they are. But they are the minority. And this is a truth you men and you women, you humans, you Homo sapiens, you earthlings, you Portlanders, you Americans, whatever the hell you call yourself, that you must come to terms with when looking at this information, and you have those knee-jerk reactions that tell you that I'm some sort of a hater or that I'm judging. We're focusing on the unconscious behavior. We're looking at evil in humanity, and in other episodes, we will go to the macrocosm and ask, where is this actually coming from? This anti-human nature, this transhumanistic agenda, this Agenda 21 agenda, all of these other things taking place, the massive gender divide, the conflicts between men and women on an energy level, especially living in unnatural cities like this, where we are divorced from nature and making full-on love to our cell phone like no tomorrow. Or until the day that comes when the solar flare disrupts transformers all throughout the grid, and then we're brought together, maybe after a few years of chaos, and we realize that we are more important than these things, than these technologies. I'll just tell you what, I'm not going to be here in Portland, or I don't want to be here in Portland when those things actually take place. There's going to be too many people here by then. Portland houses sex offenders. You may not know about this. It's simple. You go out, you commit a crime, you stick your fingers inside some young girl's vagina. It happens all the time in Portland, that homeless men that lose their minds. And there's also a lot of women that hurt women in this town. Look it up. Type in woman traffics woman, girl traffics. Hundreds of articles will pop up. This is not just about men, okay? And they will be thrown into prison, and part of their requirements for getting out of prison is to find housing. How can you have housing? How can you if you don't have money? Well, that's where Central City Concern comes in. They provide the housing for the parolee that's coming out of prison. Thus, Portland draws the sex predator because they house the sex predator. They house the sex offender. In a city full of porn, in a city full of strip clubs, in a city where there's going to be more porn companies moving up here, because a lot of them are in California. And a lot of the nasty, nasty, nasty ones are in California, San Francisco, Los Angeles. Oh, don't act like you don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know what's going on. No. You're going to find that stuff here. And with heroin addiction and girls being willing to let men do horrible things to them, beat them, whip them, it happens here all the time. There are people seeing people shoot up in the streets. Well, we'll get to homelessness soon. Satanism in Portland is rising. Moving on to wherever we were last, let's jump to graphic number 29. If you're a sex worker in this town, if you're a stripper, if you do porn, there's a nonprofit in town now set up by a few gals in Vegas that supposedly will now pamper you in their new spa here. This is another example how monetizing your sexuality, your humanity is being rewarded, while the men are persecuted for being men. In the real Portlandia, hatred of good men is real, very real. We could see its manifestation in the partners women pick, and how information presented on this show outrages people that do not wish to hear about the victims of war, the central city of system of control, and how it adversely affects the lives of women. For years, I've warned about the coming plans to occupy America. One woman said to me many years ago in 2010, that I think is probably a good representation of what a lot of New Age leaning women think about me in this town and other women. When I discussed with her in 2010 my warnings about what is coming next when China, Russia, and other countries occupy this country in the post-2020s, if things continue the way that they continue, she said, in fact, women didn't need my protection from these things that are coming down the line or warnings. It is I that harbor such desire to hurt, kidnap, and more. It was a moment that I'll remember for a lifetime And it was something that happened just shortly before moving away for a few years, just after I left the counterfeit Portland Preparedness Center that used to be located at 72nd and Gleason, owned by several very corrupted men that tried to use me as a poster child for their store while trying to get me to endure their abuse, in addition, including pressure to rip people off, an act I chose to act against and never returned to them after February of 2011, half a year before the great depart to Dallas, Texas, then from there off the grid, living in a yurt without electricity or anything for a full year in total isolation in the South Central Valley, San Luis Valley of South Central Colorado. And I'm not finished with the real Portlandia. However, there's so many more things we need to cover, and in future episodes we will cover them. But James and Bill, we're going to blast through hardcore in this last 8 minutes to go through the graphics. Number 33. In the real Portlandia, you will find out-of-shape, weak people that are afraid of the government and the alleged consequences for either housing me, hiring me, befriending me. Years of this kind of feedback has taught me things about Portland I wasn't expecting to see to such extreme levels. Even viewers of OTBTV, if I had a nickel for every time somebody asked me about government harassment, or every time someone asked me why I'm not dead yet, or why everybody thought I was a Fed, for a nickel every time somebody thought I was a Fed or a cop, or that the show is a federal operation. Did you hear that correctly? Excellent. If I had a nickel for each of those times and other ignorant things people have said or done, I wouldn't be sleeping in my truck right now, already waking up now between 3 and 6 a.m. lately due to the cold front coming in that has been bothering me as of lately. But no, you don't ask how I'm still alive in those cases. How do I do this without family left in town, or being born half white, half Afghani, being rejected by both sides of my family? You don't believe I face discrimination in this city. You think my passionate views and fiery nature is what is my problem. Yet I can show you gatherings of people in this town by the thousands to see Insane Clown Posse or some hip-hop show featuring vile lyrics about violence and beating women and selling drugs, and there will be women there. And I can show you the bra and panties being thrown on stage to the death metal singer screaming his pain in full volume through a PA system. But I speak truth, not only about the system, but our world, what is happening to men and women, women and men, the programs they are suffering from that have been strategically implanted into them in order to keep them under control. Number 36. In the real Portlandia, alcoholism is king, the city's favorite pastime, and unless your social life revolves around intoxication, your social life is limited. However, you can partake in excessive psychoactive anxiety-causing drinks like coffee if you prefer something else. Nothing like the old Fireside, it's now called something new, on Milwaukee and Powell, if you want to get effed up and be around a bunch of... I'm staying away from the hipster term tonight. I don't want to label people. We're focusing on the behavior, not race, not fashion, not label, not stereotype, the behavior. And if it applies to you, congratulations. Hopefully you'll learn something from the show. But Portland is a town where AA meetings are in abundance, like strip clubs, porn stores, heroin, sex predators, political corruption, all very popular in this town. Number 37. Heroin addiction is a huge issue right now, and as the cartels expand more into this trade, as well as human trafficking with marijuana being legalized across the board, the mass migration to the promised land of Portlandia, manifest destiny, just go west, is going to bring further problems. And in some cases, go north, just get away from LA, just San Diego, just go north, just go north. People are off the grid in Portland. Did you hear that? They're off the grid in Portland. They got like, you know, I don't know, name some transportation thing from the 17th century or 18th century. They got wagons up there. Word is on the street that heroin is very strong right now. I took this picture several days ago and talked to him afterwards. In a future episode, I'll talk about the links between solar maximums and how every solar maximum, you might want to Google what that is if you don't know, there's a record number of heroin overdoses. So we saw it in 99, we saw it in 2011. Next graphic, 38, in the real Portlandia, Satanism rules. I've seen more inverted pentagrams, never seen more inverted pentagrams in my life than in Portland, specifically between 39th and Hawthorne and 37th and Hawthorne. Skipping through this, there's also quite a few people with satanic leanings in the city that aren't professed Satanists, but they are very greedy, very self-absorbed, very much a purveyor or promoter of the do as well thou wilt mentality. In the real Portlandia, unless you present yourself as a spiritual leader, a New Age guru, a church pastor, other form of leader, or a Democrat, the people will not listen seriously with an open mind as to what your intuition is telling you. You have no value, even if you have ancient blood from the Far East inside you, beating through you, speaking through you. It means nothing to Whitelandia. They will tell you that it's all in your head and encourage you to direct your attention to voting within partisan politics or to act in a aggressive manner, breaking things like a counterfeit anarchist that violates free will, or to believe that everything in this universe, including our origins, is an accident and that other things are just simply blamed on human error or human nature. All the while, Portlanders, some, maybe not you, maybe you, quick to demonize other activists, other people. They're slow, though, however, to look in the mirror and call out their own immoralities, unsustainability, and uncooperative nature, extreme tribalism, selfish nature, carnal nature, stealing nature, sloth nature, and games they play with others for fun, and games that demand others play in order to know them or be in their circle. It's a complicated lot, perfect for a script from Tales from the Dark Side. In the real Portlandia, there are whites, then blacks, then the rest. The rating system of values the locals hold is pretty sick, and to some blacks, and I want to expand this later, if you're not black, you're white, okay? And that's been my experience in this town. For a lot of people, if you're not black, you're white, and you're the enemy. I'm the enemy, just like okay, that's great. That's a great philosophy. Good luck with that. In the real Portlandia, homelessness is exploding for so many reasons. The drug, alcohol, and mental illness problems is significant. Some ended up this way after years of life in Portland, and some have come here with many of the mass migration patterns that the city has seen over the century. Homelessness is not only being criminalized more and more throughout the country and the city, it is not understood, nor where mental illness comes from. And I think that I am going to be writing a book in this lifetime. I've just been writing, I've been gathering information, and I've been living the homeless experience in Portland. And no one's responded whatsoever. And so I wanted to purge out this information. The level of greed, apathy, and selfishness, and energy vampirism. Oh, you like me when I'm on TV presenting the news, but actually being my friend and, you know, actually communicating with me and giving me job leads, giving me a job yourself, maybe investigating me, screening me, doing a background check, making sure I'm safe, making sure I'm open to all those things. Would you like a blood sample? I'll give you a blood sample. No, seriously, would you like a blood sample? I'll give you a blood sample. What I want to say is the solutions are fairly simple. The solutions is to resist being a Borg. The solutions is to be a caring person. The solutions is to not be in the mass way of thinking. You have the power to speak for future generations of women and men and women. Be you a man or a woman. You yourself have the power to go beyond labels, especially labeling yourself in any way, shape, or form. You yourself have the ability to override any perceptions that you have no power and that your voice is insignificant. The world needs people to speak their truth, even if it's unpopular and even if people don't agree, because doing so, speaking against great and unconscious behavior on our planet, is likely a destiny that many of you have yet to realize. I will not be convinced that your only purpose is to drink, dance, devour, twerk, butt slap, dope, gentrify new land, while burning the land behind you and so much more. You have great power within you, Jedi, and there are powerful energies that you can tap into here on this planet in order to assist you along in breaking completely outside the box. The punishment